We continue now at the top of Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph and Meseches Bava Kamma. This is Bava Kamma Daf 12a. On the previous Amud, Ula said in the name of Rebbe Lazar that a creditor is allowed to collect the debt even from avodim, even from slaves. And Rav Nachman asked Ula, did Rebbe Lazar go so far as to say that one can even collect the avodim from yesomrim, from orphans who have inherited the debt, so to speak? And Ula said, no, Rebbe Lazar did not go that far. But the Gemara now continues, Levasar denafak. But after Rav Nachman left, Amar Lahu Ula said to them, Hachi Amar Rebbe Lazar. This is what Rebbe Lazar said. Afilu miyasmei. Actually, it's true even from Yisomim. The creditor is allowed to collect these slaves even from the orphans. Amar Rav Nachman. When Rav Nachman heard about this, he said, Ishtamit and Ula, that Ula escaped, meaning to say he was afraid of me. I would have refuted him had he said that in front of me. That's why he waited for me to leave, and then he said this halacha. That Rebbe Lazar said this halacha even from Yisomim. And the Gemara continues, Have uvda ben Nahardoi. There was a case like this in Nahardoi. V'agvu dayone de Nahardoi. And the judges of Nahardoi, they allowed the creditor to collect from slaves, even from orphans. Have uvda b'Pumbedisa. There was also an incident in Pumbedisa. V'agbe Rav Chana bar Bizna. The same thing. Rav Chana bar Bizna also allowed to collect from the Yisomim, that the creditors were allowed to take slaves. Amar Lahu Rav Nachman. Now Rav Nachman said to them, Zilo Hadur, you have to go return the slaves. You're not allowed to collect it from Yisomim. V'lo, and if you don't return the slaves, Magvinan L'chu Laftanaichu. So then I'm going to collect from you from your mansions, and I'll pay back the orphans from what you took from them, which was not right. And the Gemara continues, Amar Le Rava Rav Nachman. Rava said to Rav Nachman, Ha'ula ha'Rebbe Lazar ha'dayani de Nahardoi v'Rav Chana bar Bizna. We have already Ula and Rebbe Lazar and the judges of Nahardoi and Rav Chana bar Bizna. They all say that you're allowed to collect avodim from the orphans. Mar kaman svirle. Who does the master hold like that? You're saying it's not allowed. Amar Le said back to him, I know masnisu yadana. I know a brisa. The tani avime, because avime taught pruzbul chol ala karka, that pruzbul, it can be chal on land. Ve'eno chal alo avodim, but it's not chal on avodim. You see that avodim are not considered to be like land. And metaltal and niknin im hakarka, you can have movable objects acquired with land. Ve'eno niknin im ha'avodim, but they cannot be acquired with slaves. And you see that therefore that slaves are not like land, and so therefore you're not allowed to collect slaves from the orphans. And Rashi explains, Pruzbul Mefarish Begittin. Pruzbul is explained in Gittin. Shatikin Hil Hazak in Pruzbul, that Hillel the elder, he instituted the concept of Pruzbul, Kadei Shelo Teshamet Shvius Hamilveh, so that Shvius, so that the Shemitah year should not cancel the loan. Chol al Hakarka, that's Chal on land, meaning the Kevin de la Mechusri Guvaina, because when it comes to land, if you're collecting a debt from land, it's not something you really need to collect. The land doesn't move anywhere. V'zeh Kosav Lo Alein, so therefore you're right, on this land, Shekol Chov Sheyesh Lo Olav, that any obligation that he has on him, Sheyigvenu Kolzman Sheyirtze, he can collect it anytime he wants. Kaimi Bereshusei de Malva, it's as if the Malva already has this land in his Reshus, and that's how you avoid the problem of Shemitah canceling the loan. And again, that applies to land, but it does not apply to avodim. You see that avodim are not like land. And similarly, niknin imakarka, you can have a kinyan of metaltalin. When you make a kinyan on land, you can be koned the metaltalin along with the land. In machar lo karko metaltalin, let's say a person sells him land and metaltalin, the hechzik bekarka, and he makes a chazaka on the land, kana metaltalin, he acquires the metaltalin, afal pisha lo mashach, even though he didn't do a meshicha. That's generally called a kinyan agav. Ve'ein niknin im avodim, but you cannot be kona metaltalin with slaves, shem hechzik ba'avodim. If you made a kinyan chazak on the avodim, lo kana metaltalin, you wouldn't automatically acquire the metaltalin. V'yachol mocher la'achzor b'metaltalin, the mocher would be able to retract in terms of the metaltalin. Alma avda ke metaltalin. The point is, you see from this brisa that slaves are considered like metaltalin. And the Gemara continues, lema katanoi, let us suggest that it's a machlokas tanoim whether avodim are considered like karka or not. Mocher lo avodim v'karkos, if somebody sold him slaves and land, hechzik ba'avodim, lo kana karkos. If he made a chazaka on the avodim, that's not a kinyan on the land. Bekarkos lo kana avodim. If he made a kinyan on the land, that's not considered a kinyan on the avodim. Karkos and metaltalin. Let's say he sold him land in metaltalin. Hechzik bekarka kana metaltalin. If he made a kinyan chazaka on the land, he would acquire the metaltalin. But metaltalin lo kana karka. But if he made a kinyan on the metaltalin, that's not a kinyan on the land. Avodim u metaltalin. If he sold him avodim and metaltalin. So in such a situation, hechzik ba'avodim lo kana metaltalin. If he made a chazaka on the avodim, he will not acquire the metaltalin. You see that avodim are not considered like land from this brisa. But metaltalin lo kana avodim, and if he made a kinyan on the metaltalin, he would not be kona the avodim. V'atanya, but yet we learned in another brisa, hechzik ba'avadim kana metaltalin, that if he makes a chazak on the slaves, he does acquire the metaltalin. It seems to be machlokas tanoim whether the avodim are considered like karka or not. And the Gemara says, "My lab b'hakamiflgi." Aren't they arguing over this very issue? Tamar savar avodim k'mekarkoi dami, mar savar avodim k'metaltalin dami. That one holds avodim are like land, the other holds that avodim are like metaltalin. And the Gemara says, Amar Ravika Breder Rav Ami says, the Kulial Ma'avodim Kemekarki Dami. It could be that with these brises, all the brises agree that slaves are considered to be like land. V'hadatanya Kana Shaper, and the brisa which says that it is considered to be a good kinyan, that makes sense. Avodim are like land, so it can create the kinyan. V'hadatanya Lo Kana, but the brisa which says that it's not a kinyan, but Inon Karka Dumya Da'orim Mitsuros B'Yehuda, the land needs to be similar to fortified cities of Yehuda. We learn out from that pasuk that refers to the fortified cities of Yehuda. We learn out this concept of kinyan agav, to lo naidi. It has to be something that doesn't move around. Land is fixed in place, and therefore, even though avodim are like land, but in this regard, they do not create the kinyan. Rashi says, Dumya Da'ar Mitsuros has to be similar to the fortified cities, because it's from this pasuk that we learn out in Meseches Kedushin, the metaltalin niknin b'chetzkas karkos, that metaltalin can be acquired together with the chazak on land, the chsiv, as it's written in the pasuk, vayiten lehem aviyah matanos im orei mitsuros. It says their father gave matanos, gifts, with these fortified cities. Hilgach b'inan mekarkoi delo naidi kiyosam, so it needs to be land that doesn't move around like over there. So it could be, again, everybody agrees that avodim are like karka, but not in terms of this concept of kinyan agav. And the Gemara continues the Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah. Again, this is the Mishnah in Kiddushin. Nechasim she'en lam achrayis. If you have property that does not have a lien on it, meaning movable property, niknin im nechasim she'esh lam achrayis, that can be acquired together with property that does have a lien, meaning together with land, bekesef, b'shtar, v'chazak, whether you're making a kinyan kesef, shtar, or chazak on the land, you'll acquire the metaltalin as well. And Menohanimili, from where we know this idea that you can acquire movable objects along with land, Amar Chizkiya Amar Kra, Chizkiya says it's because the pasuk says, as we just said in Rashi, Vayiten lohem aviyem matanos rabos lekesef ulezav ulemigdanos im ore mitzuros b'Yehuda. It says their father gave them all of these gifts together with the fortified cities of Yehuda. You see this concept of a kinyan agav. And the Gemara continues, Ika de Amri, there are those who have a different version in terms of explaining these brises. Amar Rav Ika B'rei de Ravidi, Rav Ika B'rei de Ravidi says, the Kulial Ma'avdi Kimetaltalin Dami. It could be that everybody agrees that avodim are considered like movable objects, like metaltalin. V'hadatanya lo kana shaper. So the one that says that you don't acquire the metaltalin with the avodim, that makes sense. The avodim are like metaltalin. And hadatanya kana, and the brisa which says you can acquire metaltalin with avodim, it's talking about ba'od on all of it. It's talking when the metaltalin are upon the eved. The Gemara says, who cares? V'chiyod and all of my have it, but even if they're upon the Eved, why does that help? Chatzar Mahalechas, isn't that a moving chatzar? V'chatzar Mahalechas, lo kana, the rule is a chatzar Mahalechas does not create a kinyan. And the Gemara says, V'chitema ba'omed. Now if you're going to say that the Eved is standing still, and so it's going to be acquired in that fashion, V'amar Rava Barava said, Kol she'ilu mahalech lo kana, omed v'yoshev lo kana, that anybody that if they were walking, it's not a kinyan, it's also not a kinyan if they're standing or sitting down, so it should not be a good kinyan chatzar. And the Gemara says, V'hilchasa, but the halach is bekapos, that if the Eved is tied up, so then he's not even able to move, then it actually would be a kinyan chatzar. And the Gemara continues with another brisa that contradicts the brisas above. Tanya, what we learned in a brisa, hechzik bekarka kana avodim, that if a person makes a kinyan chazaka on the land, he can acquire the avodim. Above we said that if you make a kinyan on the land, you do not acquire the avodim. And the Gemara answers hasam over there, where it says the kinyan is good on the avodim in this brisa, but omdin besoch, it's talking about where the Eved is actually within the land, is on the property, so he's acquired along with the property. But the Gemara says, Mechlal d'hai lo kana, but that would imply that the brisa that says the Eved is not acquired with the property, Kishein omdin besocha, that would sound like we're saying it's talking about a situation where the Eved is not standing on the property. So hanicha lahach lishna, now that makes sense according to the version we said above. The Amar Ravika Brei de Ravami, the Ravika, the son of Ravami, said, Avdi kimetaltali dami, that really avodim are considered like metaltalin, like movable objects. We can make a distinction between when the Eved is on the property or not on the property. Hainu di omdin besocha ini lo lo, then we can make a distinction and say, if the animal is standing on the property, yes, and if the animal is not standing on the property, then no. But according to the version, that said that avodim are considered like land, why would the Eved need to be on the land? But didn't Shmuel say, if a person sells to a buyer 10 fields in 10 different provinces, once he makes a chazak on one of them, he acquires all of them. So the same should be true with the Eved, regardless of where the Eved is standing. But the Gemara says, one second, according to your reasoning, even according to the version that Avadim are considered metaltalin, still, lamali omen besocha, why does the Eved have to be within the land? The Kinyan Agav should work even if the Eved is not on the property, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis.